When planning a New Zealand trip, the Bay of Islands is one of those places many travelers want to visit, but it's often hard to fit in when your time is limited. In this video, I'll give you 2 ways to do it: a short 2 to 3 night stay and a 5 to 7 night road trip, plus 3 planning strategies to include this into your overall New Zealand itinerary. My name is Michael, I'm a New Zealand travel planner. Let's get started. So let's have a look at this map here, North Island of New Zealand. You can see that the Bay of Islands is around about 4 hours drive as per Google Map north of Auckland. First of all, this is not quite correct because Google Maps are always not correct in respect of time in New Zealand. So you have to calculate a little bit more, often 10 to 15%. So this is one thing I often tell my guests when planning trips, because that is often underestimated. So the overall area here, the Bay of Islands, is part of the Northland region. The Northland region is the kind of tropical northern New Zealand, so that's actually the warmest part. So it's a beautiful area to visit, but there are a couple of options I want to discuss in this video, which would be very helpful if you're interested in going up there. So many travelers are time short, meaning they have maybe 2 weeks for the whole of New Zealand. So you need to be very mindful in respect of driving. I do not recommend, if you have only 2 or 3 nights, to drive all the way up and drive the way back, because you simply spend 2 days just on the road. And you need to be aware that road up north, as you may be able to see here, it's quite windy, it's quite curvy, it's also quite a lot of traffic, so it takes much longer than you actually think it takes. So therefore, my first real advice is, if you're time short, take a domestic flight from Auckland to the Bay of Islands. It's only about a 50 minutes flight, as you can see here. And especially with flights from North America arriving quite early in the morning at Auckland Airport, this can easily be included, and then stay the time 2 to 3 nights here in the Bay of Islands. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next section when we talk about the road trip option. Also, I will mention that as part of the overall strategies, I have 3 strategies for you to use for your overall planning, including the Bay of Islands into the overall New Zealand trip. So I got this route actually laid out in this Google map. I will put a link in the description box below for you to follow that if you want. So let's go step by step, because there's lots to talk about. Right, first of all, you pick up your rental car in Auckland, central Auckland. As I usually recommend, do a transfer from the airport if you stay overnight in Auckland, and then pick up the rental car the next morning. I recommend Discover Cars. I put a link into the description box below with a wide range of rental car options, so check that out for a rental car. So you're traveling out of Auckland first. As I mentioned before, there's quite a bit of traffic on that route because it's quite a busy part of New Zealand, really, traffic-wise. So you're traveling up north, and what I usually recommend, go to the western side first. As often when you're traveling in New Zealand, there's a lot of walks along the way, like here is a scenic reserve, but here's also a place, the Matakori Kauri Museum. Let's have a look at that. So here up in the northern part of New Zealand, we have the giant kauri trees, and we will talk a little bit more about that when we're heading further north into the Waipoua forest. But here's a famous museum which showcases the history and the way they've used the kauri trees, producing the wood not only for New Zealand purpose, but also for export. That's the Kauri Museum. Worthwhile a stop. So you continue here on SH12, which is a much more pleasant driving. Self-drive in New Zealand is usually really the best way to do it, because you can stop and go, and there's hardly any traffic. What you need to understand here, the northern part of New Zealand, the Northland area, it's quite rich in Māori culture and history. So you will come across, like here's a marae. A marae is a meeting house where celebrations are done, where gatherings are done, etc. So you will come across that a lot while traveling. Here also is the smallest chapel in New Zealand. So there's all sorts of places you want to stop. You're heading into Dargaville, which is a major I shouldn't say city, but it's a larger town. It's the largest town here on the western side coast. They have a museum. A lot of places in New Zealand, they have these smaller scale museums. Lovely, lovely. 4.6 rating here. It's often a gathering of lots of different artifacts of the old settlers, the Māori history, etc., etc. So very much worthwhile planning that into your time. My suggestion is really, if you have time, if you want to discover that Northland area a little bit more in detail, have a night or two here in Dargaville. It's a lovely place. Also, you go out here to the beaches. Bailey's Beach. I've been there in my younger days. I bicycled all these routes heading through north into the Kauri forest. Now let's have a look at that one. If you find this video helpful, please hit the subscribe button below to stay in touch for more helpful travel videos to come. Plus, tick that little like button, it helps our channel to grow. Thank you very much. So you're traveling through the Waipoua Kauri forest. This is a very famous reserve, a protected area, kind of like a state forest. So you will be able to stop and see those giant Kauri trees. As you can see, it's quite a windy road. In the old days, it used to be gravel, but it's now, as far as I understand, it's tar seals. Right, here we have Tāne Mahuta, one of those giant trees that can get up to 2,000 years old, the Kauri trees. So they used to be basically all over the northern part of New Zealand, but in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they were felled, they were basically logged off and were shipped either to Auckland as building material or overseas even. Of course, in these days, they're protected. And they actually have built those boardwalks because those trees have route system which is very fragile. They have built in these walkways to protect the trees, so please stay on the walks. And there's not much infrastructure there. Just with a rental car, you just drive through. In respect of accommodation, you have very limited options here in that Waipoua area. There's Waipoua Lodge, which is basically in the middle of nowhere. It's a lovely place. I've been there myself. It's an historic building, so you could base yourself and actually could do, they call it twin light tours, which is in the evening, which is an amazing time of the day where most tourists are gone and you can actually walk through with a local guide into the forest. Otherwise, they do day tours as well. I put a link to that company into the description box below for you to check out. So otherwise, you continue north, you going into the Hokianga Harbour area. So this is classic Māori culture country. There's a lot of Māori population here. There's a lot of history. On my pier here, it's a lovely area. I stayed here for a few nights many years ago. Opononi is famous for a dolphin. I think it was in the 70s dolphins came in and they were fed by the locals. So check out some accommodation options on booking.com or an Airbnb, but this is pretty much, off the beaten country. So you head further north, go over from Reinga over with a ferry. There's a ferry service running between that southern and northern part, and then you simply continue. By the way, you could do the whole trip not only in a rental car, but also in a camper van. So I'll put a link to the Drive Now camper van comparison website in the description box below for you to check out the options. In any case, if you have any questions about this route or any other questions related to the Bay of Islands, Northland area, just put a comment into the comments box below and I'm happy to answer that. Okay, so we continue north again, 𝗥𝗄𝗆, that is on the southern end of the 90-mile beach. So this is the 90-mile beach, famous for visitors to explore. Now, as you can see, the kilometers, they're really starting to add up. I mean, 913 kilometers, 14 hours, 13 and a half hours traveling time. So all up, you really need to calculate on about 1,000 kilometers, give and take, when you're traveling with a motorhome or a rental car up to the Bay of Islands, Northland area. So I usually recommend to do a day tour with an operator up to Cape Reinga because you're actually not allowed with your rental car heading onto the beach. I mean, they actually drive with private cars and with trucks, with coaches onto the beach, but you with a rental car are not allowed it. Cape Reinga is quite a spiritual place for the Maori population. It's worthwhile going on a guided tour because then you get all the stories attached with it as well. So 𝗬𝗏𝗯𝗃 would be also a base for you to stay. Again, it's limited accommodation facilities, mainly Airbnb or motel kind of style. Another place I like is here Cooper's Beach up here, that lovely setting, lovely beaches. Mangonui, that's where the famous fish and chip shop is. You might have heard about it. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to discover the area, just stay somewhere in this area. My recommendation would be Cooper's Beach, which is kind of located, you know, between the Bay of Islands and Cape Reinga. So a perfect base, maybe a couple of nights. Now let's continue south now on SH10, and there's an array of lovely villages. We have also some famous golf courses. Here is Matauri Bay, which is the Kauri Cliffs golf course, a very expensive, kind of very exclusive golf course, but for some of you, you might be interested in playing that. So it's quite a bit outside. Here's the course. It's quite a bit outside the Bay of Islands, so it's not directly, but let me just head further south because there are some other options in respect of golfing if you want to do this. Heading south now, we are really in the Bay of Islands. So I want to provide a little bit more information now on that part because that's where most travelers will actually stay and will explore the area. So the main part here, the center of the Bay of Islands, is more or less Paihia. You have all the boats going out into the Bay of Islands. You also have a ferry service between Paihia and Russell. Russell is a little bit more laid back. I'll just show you a couple of pictures here. It's also very historic. Used to be New Zealand's first capital. It was quite a place in the 1830s. But Paihia, here's some more pictures. It's a bit more touristy, much more touristy actually. So you need to be aware of that. Everything goes either from Paihia, out of Paihia, or out of Russell. Also close by, you have Waitangi, famous for the Waitangi Treaty House and Crowns. So this is also a top-notch historic site, almost like a must visit if you go there. There's a beautiful display of history there. So that's something you want to keep in mind. And also, here's another famous golf club, Waitangi. Not as upmarket as Kauri Cliffs, but still a lovely, lovely overlooking the bay. So it's a stunning scenery. Right, but there's another place I really like when being up in the Bay of Islands is Kerikeri. You fly to Kerikeri Airport from Auckland. This is a really good flight. There are connections, as I mentioned before, it's about 50 minutes. And you're right in the Bay of Islands. You can pick up a rental car up here and then explore the area. So personally, my favorite is kind of Kerikeri. The whole place has a bit more of a village vibe, lots of walks around it as well. The famous stone store, and you know, it's an old, how shall I say, it's a place where the old missionaries started. You don't have any boats going out from Kerikeri, but it's a great base if you want to do a day trip. They pick also up here with a coach tours going right up to Cape Reinga. I got my favorite accommodation place here in the Bay of Islands in Kerikeri. It's called Tregan Retreat. I'll put a link into the description box below. So overall, I really recommend you to have 3 nights in Paihia in the Bay of Islands area. One day, obviously, to go out into the Bay of Islands, and the other day, if you really want to go up to Cape Reinga on a day trip. Keep in mind, this is a long day, about 12 hours. So it just depends what you feel like and how much time you have. Some people, as I mentioned before, want to play golf. Another thing which you may be interested is going down to Tutukaka. So Tutukaka is one of the diving hotspots here in New Zealand. If you're into diving, absolutely this is a place you want to go have a couple of nights here, because what you do, you go out to the Poor Knights Island. Let's have a look at this one. This is a maritime reserve, meaning it's protected, and you basically go out with the guided tour, and it's phenomenal. I myself, I'm not a diver, but I hear very good reports back when people done the trip. There are dolphins as well, as you can see. So this is something often not mentioned in other tourism publications, but if you have like 2 or 3 nights up here in the Bay of Islands and you want to combine that with a domestic flight and driving back to Auckland, and maybe 2 or 3 nights in Paihia, maybe 2 nights in Tutukaka, might be the right choice. And then more or less drive back to Auckland, back onto State Highway 1. There's one more place I want to mention before I go into my 3 strategies for planning this all out, is that some people actually want to go really off the beaten, and there could be something like 𝗬𝗏 Island. So 𝗬𝗏 Island is connected with a ferry service here from the Matakana area, Warkworth area. This is maybe something you want to consider. It's really off the beaten. There's accommodation available on the island. Or another one I've done a video on is Great Barrier Island, which you need to fly in from Auckland, or you can also use the ferry, but it's obviously a much longer trip going out there. This is now the road trip option if you have 5 to 7 nights for the Northland Bay of Island area. Now, I would just want to highlight 3 strategies for you to include that part of New Zealand into your overall itinerary. So the first strategy, as mentioned before, is actually flying into Auckland, often arriving early morning, then take a domestic flight, fly up north into the Bay of Islands to Kerikeri, stay there, either Kerikeri or Paihia or whatever, for 2-3 nights, and then make your way back to Auckland with a rental car or fly back, and then do the rest of the North Island and the South Island. So that's my first strategy. So my second strategy would be to do the North Island part first. So go down, pick up a car, Auckland, go down to Waitomo Caves, do the center part of the North Island like Taupo, traveling through Waitomo here, the Bay of Plenty, then head maybe over to the Coromandel Peninsula, which is fairly similar actually to the Bay of Islands. Like they have beaches, they have kauri trees, etc. And then head north towards the Bay of Islands, or you could make it, let's say, just to Tutukaka, as mentioned before, and then maybe do a day trip up north. Really depends on your interests and what you do. So this is my second strategy to incorporate the Bay of Islands. My third strategy would be to actually visit other parts of New Zealand. Some people would start here in the South Island, then do the North Island, and then at the end of the trip, you could include the Bay of Islands. This actually makes total sense. So it doesn't really matter too much if you do North Island, South Island, and vice versa, but at the end of the trip, have the Bay of Islands, if it's 3 or 4 nights or 5 nights, whatever you have available. So if you base yourself in the Bay of Islands, you can do all these day trips. You can head over to the west coast, to the Waipoua forest. You can do the Cape Reinga as well as day trip, as mentioned before. But having this at the end of the trip, if you really want to include the Bay of Islands, makes total sense to me, and I often recommend that to my travelers. So this is maybe an option which is interesting for you, instead of actually going like to the Fiji Islands or to Cook Islands. Often this is a great time in the summer season between November and March, April. The Bay of Islands is a perfect spot to actually to finish off a trip, with beaches, with sunshine, and with warmer temperatures. So here you have it, an overview on how best to plan your time into the Bay of Islands. For anyone wanting to travel less and still have a similar experience, check out my Bay of Islands versus Coromandel comparison video up here. It's another great trip option for time-short travelers. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video.